So I've been watching other trials roll out, namely Delphi and Sarah Boone, and maybe this is just something I've always taken for granted, but I did notice how organised they're rolling it out. We're currently in day 6 of the Delphi trial, for example, and up until this point, the entire scenario, from the point the girls were noticed missing, right through to finding them, and setting up the crime scene perimeter, processing the crime scene, and then the ME processing the bodies. And what this is essentially doing is it's getting out of the way what evidence is collected by whom and who is going to be testifying as to the veracity of that evidence. For example, you can't ask a 911 responder to answer questions about how a bullet was collected on scene and packaged. If you want to ask that sort of question, you have to ask the person who collected and packaged the bullet. Now, once you have them testify, you may not want to dismiss them right away, so that other questions can be asked of them about that specific evidence that they're testifying to. We're up to the witness testimonies in the Delphi case, because it's through witness testimonies that Richard Allen's name came up. Right after that, we will have the procedures that were implemented to search his house and what was found at his house. So essentially, the point is there's a very organised pattern being implemented by the state in time order, so the jury can easily put it into time order and keep it all straight in their head. We're seeing a similar process unfold in the Sarah Boone trial, and this got me to thinking about the way that Lally presented his case at trial. Let me show you what I mean. First of all, let me shout out Brandy Churchwell of the 13th Juror podcast for keeping this awesome spreadsheet that I have referred to time and time again to keep things in order in my own head, which we'll be using today to show you how disorganised Lally's presentation was. You may recall the first 2 people on the stand were Paul and Erin O'Keefe. Their testimony amounted to Karen acted weird after she was told her boyfriend had just passed away, followed shortly thereafter by Officer Seraph, who jumps to a completely different timestamp in the order of events to him pulling up at the scene, by which his own dashcam will be used in the testimony of the following witnesses. Lally intended him to be the first one to say he heard Karen say, "I hit him," but he didn't testify to that, nor did he report it in any of his reports. The next day, we have all the EMTs come out. So there's 6 in all, and they testify over a period of 3 days. Over that period of time, Lally's only able to get 3 of them to testify to hearing, "I hit him," and all 3 are impeached by Officer Seraph's dashcam. The last 3 are interrupted by a viewing of the site and the car, which really has nothing to do with what's being testified to so far, and the days end with 3 separate witnesses who testify about things that happened at the hospital and then jumping back to the crime scene and then back to the hospital again. He does eventually crisscross back to the hospital again, but not before he crisscrosses back over the crime scene several times. Day 4 is testimony from 3 other responding officers at the crime scene, which goes into day 5, again flipping around the timeline between the scene earlier that morning, the hospital, and then after the hospital and back to the scene again on day 6. Day 7 flips from events that happened after the hospital back to events that happened the night before. The first 3 witnesses of the day testify that they didn't see Karen Reid drunk. So Lally brings in the server from the Waterfall, who also testifies that the receipt from the Waterfall bar doesn't support that Karen Reid was drunk. 2 more testify that Karen Reid wasn't drunk. And then we switch to day 8, where all the partygoers testify, beginning with that they were all pretty drunk. Day 9 continues on with partygoers admitting that they were partying. And the same for day 10. On day 11, we have 2 witnesses who say they did not see John O'Keefe in or around the car. And then we flip to another witness who says they saw a blob near the car. On day 12, we have 3 more witnesses who say they did not see John O'Keefe anywhere near the car whilst they were parked behind it. From the end of day 12 through to day 13 and 14, we have more partygoers admitting that they were probably quite drunk but denying it. And then we get completely sidetracked at the end of day 14 into day 15 with Jennifer McCabe's How Long to Die in the Cold search. Now, one would think this would be a great time to bring in your 2 experts to testify about that search, but no, not Lally. Lally takes a detour into Aruba, where 2 girls testify they don't like Karen. Day 17 and half of day 18 is diverted again to a man who says he does like Karen, a little bit too much, which then takes another turn to Officer O'Keefe's nephew and niece who say they don't like Karen, and then screech, we end back at the hospital again. After all the testimony that Karen wasn't drunk, we're now listening to 2 doctors who say they drew blood and a lab tech who says the blood tested very high for alcohol. And day 18 ends with a plough contractor going back to the night of, with a quick beeline back to the morning of, where Lally wasn't able to properly introduce the video evidence he wanted to use. And the day ended with Bev allowing him to use the video evidence anyway. Day 19 skips forward again to the afternoon after, when the missing persons search team grid searched the entire location and found no taillight, and then hurtles towards the end of the day with testimony from the 2 lab technicians who examined the taillight that wasn't found by the search and rescue team. Day 20 begins with the defence trying to clarify what all the X-Y numbers actually mean for the jury as it relates to glass fragments found. And day 20 comes to a close with going back to the crime scene with one of the investigators who apparently found all the tail light pieces and glass pieces. In proper courtroom procedure, the lab techs shouldn't have been able to testify about the pieces until this chap testified about collecting the pieces. But you know, anything goes in Bev's courtroom. Day 21 continues with the taillight pieces revealing themselves, and Lally's desperate attempts to keep Trooper Proctor off the stand by using Trooper Buchanek to bring Proctor's testimony in, which didn't actually work. Not for the lack of trying, because on day 22 he was still going at it. Shortly thereafter, Sergeant Barros from Dighton flips the script again and goes to the morning of, where he didn't see any cracked taillight. And then out of the blue, here comes Proctor. Lally's intention was to introduce the glass and taillight evidence that had just previously been testified to by the lab techs 2 days before. However, Trooper Proctor's testimony gets waylaid and sidetracked into so many different areas we can't even remember. And so by day 23, Lally needs a credible witness to take the stand straight after Proctor's disaster. Enter Tully, who also skips around the timeline back and forth without actually clearing anything up at all, as does the next witness. And then towards the end of day 24, we move to some more lab techs who cleared up absolutely nothing other than a hair belonging to John was precariously perched on the car, and that Officer O'Keefe left his own DNA on the glass that he left the bar with, and also stained his own clothes with his own blood. Day 25 zigzags back to Jennifer McCabe's testimony 9 days prior, give or take a weekend, where Miss Hyde tries to baffle the jury with BS about the 2:27 a.m. search the night of. Then we switch to Trooper Paul's testimony back to the morning of, Then when he's done confusing everybody on day 26, we switch back to Ian Whiffen, who testifies again about the 227 search the night of, before closing out the day with Trooper Gorino switching back to the morning of, the night of, the day of, multiple times, which is interrupted on day 27 with Vardia of the defence witnesses, and then continues through day 28 of Trooper Guarino contradicting Lally's entire theory regarding the timeline the night of. Then we quickly switch tacks again to the MEs and the injuries to Officer O'Keefe's body. And that is where Lally leaves the jury completely dizzy, disoriented, and so completely bamboozled that the jury will never put all their notes together into any sort of time order to work out what was actually said. Lally's storyline was all over the shop like a kleptomaniac. Now, we can guess why he did that. Maybe it was to completely bamboozle the jury. Or maybe that's just how Lally's brain ticks, all over the shop like a kleptomaniac. Either way, what I'm seeing at the Sarah Boone and Delphi trials is way more organisation, deliberate timelines in time order. I know there's a lot of people out there who are dissing the prosecution in both of these cases, but seriously, what are we comparing this to? Because as far as presentation goes, I'm seeing apples and oranges. There's no comparison between Lally and these other two prosecutors at all. I mean, comparing Lally with either of those fruits is really too generous. He's more like the banana that got shoved up the clacker of the duck and squished out the other side, fed to a baby and then pooped out into a diaper and tossed in the garbage can. Anyway, whether you like them or not, they are definitely not Lally. Not even close.